Hello, everyone. My name is Jordyn Smith, and I am the voice and the astrologer behind the YouTube channel Nonconformist Conscience. I am back to doing my weekly forecast. Before I jump in, I just want to say that for the past 3 months, I have been going through some personal reflection, and I needed to take the time to really just self-reflect. And I'm bringing this up because a lot of you guys have emailed me. Some people have been upset that I wasn't doing the weekly forecast. And one, I just want to say it's a public service that I'm doing. I don't get paid to do a weekly forecast. I do it because I love doing it and I feel called to do it. But I also think that it's really important, especially during Capricorn season. And I've talked about this. I have a lot of Capricorn. My sun sign is a Capricorn, but we live in a very patriarchal world that says that we are supposed to go, 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 go. And even if something's going on in your own personal life, that you don't stop, you don't slow down. It's like you forge ahead, you know? And for this Capricorn, I like to tend to go to the polarity point, which is Cancer. And for me, I wanted to self-reflect on some of the things that have been going on in my life with my family, especially Capricorn. And personally, to really get to the bottom of what it is that I have been experiencing. I have um, just, the last half of 2023, crisis didn't happen because I took time for myself. And I want to talk about how important it is to sometimes slow down, to take time to self-reflect, which is a Capricorn function. Evolution is really about evolving through our emotional dynamics. And for me, there was a Uranian inner drumbeat of needing to slow down, of needing to really take the time to process everything that was going on in my life. And there was nothing bad, quote unquote, going on, but there was a lot of emotional content that was wanting to come up. And so I'm going to kind of segue this into the Capricorn archetype, considering that this is Capricorn season and that this is also Mars entered Capricorn on the 4th. So with Capricorn, the archetype is very much about being your own natural authority and about stepping outside of your own inner status quo if it is naturally expressed. Whenever it is not naturally expressed, it can be where we experience depression or repression or suppression or feeling oppressed. And when we experience depression, it is because there is something there in the polarity, Cancer, some emotional dynamic that is wanting to be explored and to be understood in order to be one's own natural authority. To be one's own natural authority, we have to understand our emotional dynamics. And I love saying you've got to heal it, you've got to feel it to heal it. And so if you're someone, which I've had an immense amount of clients that I've been working with, even while I took my hiatus from doing the weekly forecast, that have been experiencing depression. And depression points to the need to self-reflect, the need to go within and to really explore our own emotional dynamics. And so I'm someone who really wants to, another Capricorn word is to be integral and to not be hypocritical, which can be the distortion or the unnatural expression of Capricorn. And so for me, as someone doing this work, it was really important for me to practice what I preach, per se, which is there was this process of me needing to go inwards. I think a lot of people were feeling this during Mercury retrograde. It was a time of self-reflection. I had wrote a little bit about this on my website. And so I just wanted to put that out there, that for those who reached out, for all of my clients who kept booking and seeing me and having sessions with me, I really appreciate it. And I also appreciate the respect that I was given during this time. So that's a little bit about the Capricorn, archetype, and also a little bit about my personal self. I love being vulnerable with you guys because I feel like vulnerability, if it hadn't been for some of the people in my life who were vulnerable and were courageous about being vulnerable in a society that says that you can't, you're not supposed to, you're supposed to stuff. If it hadn't been for some of those people in my life who were courageously vulnerable with me, and mirrored that to me, and through their mirroring, it taught me about how to be vulnerable myself, I wouldn't feel like I could be vulnerable on here. And I feel like vulnerability opens space for other souls to understand that it's okay to be vulnerable. And so I just wanted to put that out there. So without further ado, let's really dive into this week. So I'm going to backtrack just a little bit. Mars entered Capricorn on the 4th, and Mars is about our desires. It is about what the soul is desiring to do, what it's wanting to do in order to keep its evolution going. Through our desires and exhausting them, we evolve further. Mars is naturally ruled by Aries and the first house. And the polarity of that is Libra. And so if Mars is about our desires and the need to initiate actions stemming from those desires, it creates an action to where then through Libra, we have a counterpoint, a counteraction. And through that counteraction, we get to learn about ourselves. We get to take that information in and then get to apply it to ourselves. And then through Capricorn and Cancer, we get to emotionally discover more about ourselves and learn about how to be responsible Capricorn and how to react or respond. What should we be reacting, or should we be responsibly responding? And so it can teach us a lot about these dynamics. So with Mars and Capricorn through a transit, we can look at our own natal chart and say, well, my natal Mars is in Aries and it's in the 12th house, and there's this dissolving process that's going on in a really generalized sense. I'm just throwing something out there. But through the transit of Mars and what house it falls in to your own natal sign, we get to see what lessons revolving around our desires that we're wanting to learn that further our own evolutionary growth. So with Mars and Capricorn, for a lot of people right now, there can be things coming up revolving around whether or not that they've suppressed or repressed their own natural desires. And there are lessons in needing to be responsible with what to act on, Mars. There can be desires that are happening depending on where this falls in your chart of lessons of learning about how to be integral, how to make correct judgment, how to self-reflect, how to step outside of your own status quo, meaning if there's something that has been crystallized within the structure, Capricorn, of our reality, Capricorn, we might come face to face with choices as to how to be responsible on how to create reaction or a response on what to act on and what not to act on. And that brings in the Capricorn dynamic of correct judgment. Correct judgment comes from our wisdom, and wisdom comes through reflection on self, reflection on prior experiences. This also leads to, throughout this transit, you might be gaining natural wisdom through direct experience. That is a Capricorn function. Direct experience creates wisdom through the self-reflection of that direct experience. So there can be a lot of instances coming up right now with work, family, or even with your own emotional dynamics that are wanting you to tap into the data bank within your soul of your own natural wisdom to step outside of the status quo, of how you've been living, of how you have been structuring your reality. With Mars through this transit, it is ruled by Saturn in the sign of Pisces, which is now direct. So there can be a lot coming up around what we have structured our reality around, our conditioning, another Capricorn word, conditioning. Conditioning from family, conditioning from society, conditioning around religion or culture. And the need to self-reflect and understand, am I in a structured reality that is based on this conditioning, or do I need to step outside of this and be my own natural authority and make a correct judgment call and do something different? Do something that I haven't necessarily done before as a way to be courageous in an act of self-love, of being my own natural authority. In EA, with the archetype of Capricorn, it's often talked about how being a natural authority of your own life is by asking and answering your own questions instead of going to Libra, that square in the cardinal cross of projecting expectations onto someone else or taking in the voices of another. Considering that Libra is the outer expression of Venus, so it's the us listening to another. Sometimes we take in too much of other people's opinion or advice, and it kind of muddies the waters of us asking and answering our own questions. So that can be something that is coming up right now for some of us throughout this Mars and Capricorn transit as well. And with Saturn and Pisces being its ruler, there's a culmination process of dissolving old structures within ourselves with how we've structured our emotional reality, how that has been projected out into the world, and how it then structures how we live. So there's this dissolving process that is wanting to come about as a way to culminate long-standing internal crystallizations of emotional content right now. This can also really be about our ideals regarding relationships, you know, especially as Mars is going to be approaching a square to the nodal axis soon in the next coming weeks. So there can be correct judgment that needs to be made, that you're desiring to make regarding your own independence and freedom, Mars, Aries. and how you interact with others in relationships. So there can be a lot that is surfacing right now throughout our consciousness as to how do I ask and answer my own questions? Am I depending on others instead of grounding within my own inner reality, within my own inner wisdom of how to make a correct judgment? So this week, we have a new moon in Capricorn. We also have a couple of other transits going on, some involving Mars, some involving Mercury. So let me take a step back as well. And this is just, it's perfect for Capricorn, considering Capricorn or any of the cardinal signs can really feel like taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Meaning that sometimes we feel like we're trucking along and we're getting ahead, and then something comes along that makes us have to self-reflect and reflect on the past. There's a reason why Capricorn is the mountain goat. Sometimes we have to climb slow and steady, and we can forget where and how far we've came. And with Capricorn, we can self-reflect and look back down on the mountain to see how far we really actually have come. And so during Mercury retrograde, that Mercury station direct on the 1st during the afternoon, and it's now passing back over these degrees. It's going to re-enter Capricorn after the new moon later on in the week, on the 13th. So there's this time of, as Mercury is in the sign of Sagittarius, it's going to be ruled by Jupiter and Taurus, where what we had been self-reflecting on during the Capricorn retrograde, now we're being able to implement that information and that wisdom if we were consciously utilizing it. Whether it be external instances were triggered where we were re-experiencing some dynamic as a way to kind of force us to self-reflect and to dive into the emotional body. Now, as it, is direct, it's going back over these signs, these degrees. It will hit the degree at the 8 degrees Capricorn where it's stationed retrograde next week. So while it's in Sagittarius and ruled by Jupiter in the sign of Taurus, that is now direct, this is a way to really expand. The call is to expand on the information that we were gathering during that Mercury retrograde and to really apply it to our relationship with ourselves, Taurus. To really listen to the internal voice of what does this mean and how do I expand upon it, and what is my own personal truth regarding this information? What feels true and authentic for myself? So on the 8th, Mars sextiled Saturn, and it's in a last quarter sextile. And to me, this really reflects this need to trust our own judgment as to what to dissolve, what needs to no longer exist. What judgment call can you make about that? And then the information that we have come to understand, how can we apply it and integrate it into our life? Neptune squares Mercury in a last quarter phase as this is going on as well, which really emphasizes this dynamic. So with Mars and Saturn in this conversation, while Neptune is square Mercury in a last quarter phase, it really is a call to not only integrate, but it's a call of action to heal. How can you take responsibility for your own emotional dynamics as a way to heal? What has been coming up for you? What has been the internal process that you've been going through? What have you learned? What are you needing to apply in life right now? Can you see how far you've come? There's this other dynamic that's going on with the astrology, with all of the Capricorn energy, which is sometimes with Capricorn, we can feel really stuck, like repressed in our own emotional dynamics. And this feeling of, I don't know what to do. I don't know what choice to make. I don't know how to heal. I don't know how to go about doing this. And the key is to continue to self-reflect and just making that conscious choice to do that and to explore the emotional dynamics. With Capricorn, if you consciously do this, even if you're doing it and you feel like, oh, I'm not getting anywhere, I'm not getting anywhere, I feel depressed or I feel stuck, all of this, if you consciously continue to do this, eventually it is like a champagne bottle being uncorked, and not in an explosive way, but in the pressure is released and all of the emotional dynamics that felt repressed within or stuck and stagnant and not really knowing what to do, they all of a sudden start flowing. And it's just made out of this conscious choice to continue to self-reflect. It has to be this self-determination of self-reflection. Even if you feel like you're not getting anywhere, even if you feel like you're stuck on the mountain paralyzed, you know, you can look down, self-reflect, okay, but I know that I'm gonna get somewhere. I just haven't found the rock to put my foot on to keep climbing yet. It can kind of be this feeling, but eventually the information comes. And that is part of this Neptune square Mercury in the last quarter and Mars sextile Saturn. It's interesting because, you know, Saturn is ruled by this Neptune and Mars is ruled by that Saturn. And so it's like this big emphasis on being in the home stretch. The pressure is really contained, and the self-determination to keep investigating and looking within and wanting to heal and understand whatever emotional content is there, eventually that pressure gets released, and then an awareness comes. And then through that awareness, healing can be really activated. And so I want us to keep this in mind during this week. So on the 9th, the sun in Capricorn is going to be in a first quarter trine to Uranus. And while that's happening, Saturn and Pisces is going to be sextile Jupiter and Taurus in a crescent phase sextile. So the sun is where we self-actualize. It's where we integrate our specific purpose in life. So you look at your own natal sun. Mine is in Capricorn in the 9th house. Everything revolving around my own evolutionary growth is about me being my own authority, staying in my own natural authority and speaking my personal truths and then teaching about them. The sun, Capricorn, 9th house. So wherever your sun's at will give purpose of self-actualization to your own specific chart. But through transit, the sun helps us learn this information and kind of funnels back into our own natal sun. I hope I'm articulating this for you guys. That way you can apply it to your own astrology chart. If not, come see me. I can explain it. I'm here. So with the sun in a first quarter trine to Uranus, this kind of segues off of what I was just talking about. A first quarter trine can be where something is at an evolutionary standstill. And with Capricorn, it can be about our conditioning, and Uranus is about the liberation process from our conditioning. Uranus in the sign of Taurus, retrograde still, is really about reliving, redoing in order to resolve what it is that we're really needing to liberate from within ourselves that's affecting our relationship to ourselves. And it can stem from our conditioning. So our conditioning speaks to our values and our needs, Taurus. So there's something here that wants to be resolved through the function of liberation. But to liberate, one has to objectify their inner reality, their relationship to themselves. As this is going on, Uranus is ruled by Venus in Sagittarius. And Jupiter, which is, sextile Saturn, the sun's ruler at this time, that's in the first quarter trine with Uranus. Jupiter and Venus are in mutual reception. And this type of mutual reception with Jupiter and Venus is really about expanding upon one's inner truth and inner knowing of who they are, their authenticity. And so there's this call to really integrate what this is as a way to dissolve old structures. With the sun being ruled by Saturn, here it really speaks to this dynamic of the integration of self-actualization, is to really look at how we've structured our life. Then the trine to Uranus retrograde from the sun is about objectifying this structured reality, how it's affected how we are able to listen to ourselves, our inner voice, what our personal truths are. Are they different from how we've been structuring our reality? Have we been living authentically? Or have we been doing what other people have been telling us to do, at essentially giving away our own authority? And so there can be things at an evolutionary standstill where there's this crystallization process of stagnation of emotional dynamics that are affecting our inner relationship to self. And the need is to objectify this as a way to liberate from it in order to activate that trine in a natural sense and to self-actualize through being our own authority, of being the one who really chooses. Who do I want to be in this world? How do I want to show up? How do I want to be the leader of my life? And then with the sun's ruler, Saturn and Pisces sextiling Jupiter in a crescent phase, as we do that and we liberate from these dynamics, we can really apply our authenticity to restructure our reality as a way to also culminate the old and to promote further healing of our relationship to ourselves. What better way to heal our relationship to ourselves than to just live authentically through liberating from the BS that has been projected onto us or that we've taken on? Uranus and Taurus has really been about this radical transformation of our relationship to self. So if you've been doing this work and all of a sudden you kind of feel stuck, this trine can really illuminate where you're feeling stuck. And the inner drumbeat of Uranus, it's really important to pay attention to what keeps coming up in your mind. What are you supposed to be acting on? Uranus is that inner drumbeat. It is, my friend Stacy talks about it. She learned it from Jeffrey Wolf Green. I love this correlation because it's like this inner vibration, this inner voice, right? It's emphasized here in the sign of Taurus of whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing, it's going to get louder and louder and louder. And it's about a correct judgment as a way to heal. And so the need is to act on that, to have the integration that is the prayer of this trine and that sextile. And because Saturn is in a conversation with Jupiter, and Jupiter and Uranus are both ruled by this Venus, it really emphasizes paying attention to the inner voice, because through Pisces, Saturn and Pisces, these are the whispers that are emanating from within our soul. And then the vibration becomes louder and louder as to what to do, that Uranian drumbeat. And it can promote healing. It's really worth mentioning too that so much with relationships have been coming up this past year, and they will continue to come up, especially because of this nodal axis. And what I have seen a lot with people is when relationships end, so often how we're conditioned is we need to stay busy. We need to keep ourselves busy. Or how often have you seen someone else jump into another relationship? This would be more of this South Node Libra, like never giving yourself a chance to integrate what you learned during that relationship. And now that it's over, just superimposing someone else in your life. With all of the Saturn and Pisces, Neptune conversations going on that I've been talking about, it's really important to face the void. Whatever void could be happening in your life regarding relationships, it's important to sit with oneself and to nurture this inner relationship as a way to be one's own natural authority, as a way to be able to reflect, to gain the wisdom. If we are just staying busy, we're not gaining that wisdom that this astrology is really reflecting right now. And it's important to face the void of what once was there, and to be still, and to go within, and to just listen. And at first, you may not understand what it is that you're supposed to be doing, but eventually something will erupt out of your subconscious, and then it will become louder and louder and louder. And then you will know what direction it is that you're meant to take from the wisdom that you gain from whatever the experience is, from the relational dynamics that you just went through. But the key is you have to sit with the void, and you have to be able to self-reflect in order to gain the wisdom from that direct experience. And this can be hard because feelings can be really uncomfortable. We're so conditioned, right? And this goes along with this astrology, like looking at how have you been conditioned to sit with your emotions right now? Is it to stay busy, or is it to really go into an internal process of self-exploration of how did that feel, Taurus? And what is that feeling correlated to on an emotional level? Feelings can show up in the body as a reaction, but they are tied to an emotional dynamic inside of us that we're supposed to be exploring. And so this is a time to do that. And that is a way to face an inner void. And then through that births content from the subconscious that then gives us inner direction through the direct experience and the wisdom that we just gained. So I want to really emphasize that this is so important, and it's not talked about enough. And so really looking at feelings and emotions of uncomfortability with sitting with oneself. Do you stay busy? Are you able to explore your emotional dynamics? With Mercury right now being a big part of this conversation, and it's ruled by this Jupiter, writing down how you feel, doing a review over what you learned as a way to expand upon that content. This is really a way to get in touch with your own relational needs and values. And this doesn't have to be romantic relationships, okay? Sometimes friendships can end and we feel a void there. Like, why did that happen? Sometimes things come up with family. And it really serves the purpose, any type of relationship, to help us understand our relational needs, what we're valuing and what we're needing. And I want to speak to this just a little bit as well, because we're so often conditioned that a need in a relationship is actually a projected expectation of giving away our authority, the distortion of Capricorn with Libra. A need isn't, I need someone who makes a lot of money. That's a projected expectation. I need you to do this for me. I need you to da 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 da. A natural need would be, I know who I am and I know what I value in myself. And now I'm starting to see what I value in partnership, friendship, family with another. So from that value, we can understand what we need. That need can look like, I need to have friends and partnerships in my life where people are willing to grow and evolve because I'm willing to grow and evolve. And that creates equality. That's a way to resolve that dynamic of inequality, is really getting down to understanding what it is one needs and what is a projected need or expectation, what one really values in a relationship. So if you've had something come to an abrupt ending, seeing as this Uranus is really activated, and same with Saturn, and it's the ruler of, you know, Pluto still before it enters into Aquarius, and then whenever it enters into Aquarius, it's going to be ruled by Uranus. This is the time to self-reflect in order to understand what it is that we're supposed to be liberating from. And also, it's a time to really objectify what our relational needs and values are by really getting in touch with our own personal truths. So the way to do that is, if you've had anything go on relationally as of lately, even if you have trauma that is being triggered and coming up, Uranus and Taurus, that's affecting you, maybe on a physical level, where you're feeling it in your body, your nervous system may be dysregulated. There's this call to really go into the emotional body and self-reflect to gain that wisdom. And then you can apply that to understanding what it is you're truly valuing and needing, how to create that self-reliance in yourself, and then how to change your inner vibration so that way you're going to call in those people who are on an equal basis with you, who value and have the same needs and values as you, that are not a projected expectation or a projected relational need. All right. So this gets me to the 11th. There's a new moon occurring on the 11th at 20 degrees Capricorn, 20 degrees, 44 minutes. I will repeat this every time. A new moon is when the sun and the moon conjunct. I don't know how many people come on here who are new to astrology, so I'm going to speak to this. The new moon reflects a time period of new emotional dynamics that are birthing, that are wanting to be birthed from the consciousness as a way to work on them to integrate the lessons of that. This new moon is in the sign of Capricorn. So it's the first new moon of the new year, and Mercury on New Year's station direct. So it's as if we are wanting to apply that information in a new way as a way to actualize this new moon and these emotional dynamics that are being birthed into our consciousness as a way to work on it. So this is a time period of, again, whatever is coming up into your consciousness is wanting to be reflected on. This new moon is ruled by Saturn in Pisces. That is at 4 degrees, and it is sextile Mars during this new moon. And this is in a last quarter sextile. So there are desires that can be emanating from within our consciousness that are wanting to be acted upon as a way to dissolve these old structures, to look at our own ideals and man-made structures, to have a dissolving process so that this new way of emotionally being and maturing, emotional maturity, Capricorn, can happen. That means with Mars in the sextile, Mars at 5 degrees Capricorn, it's also ruled by the Saturn in Pisces. Pluto is at 29 degrees Capricorn, ruled by this Saturn in Pisces, is really speaking to the old way of being and inwardly relating to oneself is wanting to dissolve. And we are in a time of emotional maturation right now. With Mars being activated in this chart, there can be a lesson in being emotionally responsible with how one responds versus reacts during this time period. Is there something within your own emotional development that is wanting to be dissolved because it is no longer working? How can you take responsibility for your own healing? Pisces. Venus in Sagittarius is in a disseminating trine with Chiron. Chiron is in Aries. It is approaching that North Node in Aries. And Chiron and the North Node are ruled by this Mars in Capricorn. And I want to talk a little bit about this. Venus is also ruled by this Jupiter in Taurus. Jupiter is trining Mars. So this is like this conglomerate of a conversation astrologically that is being activated during this new moon. So let's take this step by step. With Venus in a disseminating trine to Chiron in Aries, Chiron and Aries being ruled right now by a Mars in Capricorn can really bring up these wounds around family dynamics of where we might have experienced a parent's anger or rage when we were younger, or feeling neglected or abandoned by a parent, seeing as Pluto is part of this conversation as well. And Chiron is really about changing our awareness around our wounds. Sylvia Hill has a book titled Shamanism, and I wrote a little bit about this in the weekly forecast that I will post a link to if you're someone who likes to read. But she talks about shamans, which are directly correlated in astrology with the Sagittarius archetype and the Chiron archetype, by the way, because shamans are known as the wounded healers. But in shamanism, a shaman gets initiated into shamanism through extremes, whether it be some type of crisis like war or some emotional dynamic or a sickness, right? That's why they have shaman sickness. But it can be a plethora of different things that activate this. What ends up happening is the shaman's wounds don't ever close. The awareness around the wound changes through the direct experience of spirit and natural law and reflecting on all of this of the wound to change the awareness. But the wound never closes because the wound symbolizes, and this is what Sylvia Hill speaks to in her book Shamanism, that the wound is actually, it never closes because it's a portal for others' healing. And so right now, This is a time period to really get to the bottom of where we have felt wounded early on in life, where that has affected our judgment, our ability to make direct judgment or correct judgment. What wisdom have we gained from these wounds that we might have had early on in childhood, or seeing as this is Capricorn, around our Saturn return for those of us who are old enough or at one of our Saturn returns? What healing needs to take place? The wound isn't going to heal completely, but our awareness around it does. And that's part of this Saturn and Pisces being the ruler of Mars and Capricorn. So how we do this is through this disseminating trine from Chiron to Venus and Sagittarius. We expand upon the awareness or what we have been understanding, and that is through acting on the desires to really self-reflect on these experiences that we've had, even if we feel like it's too much or it's hurtful, or I don't want to experience the pain or the reliving by thinking about it. There's a need to re-enter that emotional fracture as a way to shape and change the awareness around it and to expand upon it. The more one expands upon their inner knowing, the more one knows oneself. And the more one knows oneself, the more one can live authentically. And that is part of this disseminating trine between Chiron and Aries and Venus and Sagittarius. And with Venus being ruled by Jupiter and Taurus, this is really about changing our relationship to ourselves through understanding our own natural truths and changing our awareness around where one has felt wounded in the past. And really being responsible for our own personal healing right now. So that is a big part of this new moon. I feel like with Jupiter and Venus being a mutual reception in these signs, I actually have I have a Venus in Sag and I have a Jupiter in Taurus. And my experience in my life has really been about this journey to understand myself in the most authentic and sincere way. It's a journey, Sag, of exploration, just kind of pulling in the polarity of Sagittarius, which is Gemini, and to really recover my nature, who I naturally am, that is rooted in natural law. That's my Venus and my Jupiter. And so this can be a time period of really expanding upon one's own inner knowing and needing to with this type of dynamic being in mutual reception with this particular conversation, Venus being in a disseminating trine to Chiron, posing or pondering, which is a Sagittarius phenomenon or part of the archetype, just with a sincere intention of wanting to know or understand or change one's awareness around something, eventually that awareness can come in and be disseminated to one. And so if there's something you're wanting to know about where you felt hurt or wounded and how that has affected you, or your sense of inner authority or your own emotional dynamics, this is a great new moon to really be self-determined to understand what that is through posing that question to yourself and then allowing it to come through. Maybe that's through journaling, seeing as Mercury is in Sag and it is semi-sextile to Pluto right now, as a way to dissolve these old structures and as a way to take a stance of being your own role model. Essentially, part of Chiron being ruled by Mars in Capricorn right now, and then this new moon is, I really feel like this can be about reparenting oneself, being one's own mother and father through expanding upon the inner content and understanding one's own natural truths instead of the projections that maybe we experienced as a child or when we were younger and the conditioning. This is a new moon that speaks to taking responsibility for oneself and reparenting oneself as a way to heal. Saturn and Pisces being the ruler of this. Neptune is still square Mercury during this time, so there can be this need to dissolve old beliefs that have affected our sense of self-esteem. This pulls in the Venus function and Jupiter and Uranus being in Taurus. Really, like, what projected beliefs do you need to understand that have affected your sense of self and your self-esteem and your what is the word I'm looking for? Yes, your inner security on an emotional level, because that pulls in the moon's energy and also the polarity of Capricorn, which is Cancer, but it's also your self-confidence. Has something affected your self-confidence? Is there an inner tape playing that you're listening to, Taurus, that is about a belief that was projected upon you that needs to be healed? And there needs to be more of a conscious awareness of how one talks to oneself. This can also be the trine from Uranus to the new moon. It's, the new moon and Uranus are in a disseminating trine as well. So it's like there can be great liberation from the inner voice of others' projections as a way to then take responsibility for one's own reparenting. The sun and the new moon are square the nodal axis. So this can really be about others' projected expectations onto us or our projected expectations onto another, and needing to really analyze and objectify and reflect on this information as a way to heal these dynamics. With this new moon and the sun squaring the nodal axis, the resolution is the south node, which is ruled by Venus and Sagittarius. So the need to understand one's own personal truths as a way to resolve. This is where skip steps could be made in a lifetime if you don't consciously work with this. This is especially true if any of this is hitting your own natal chart. And at the end of this video, I will share this chart so you can take a look at it and screenshot it if you want. But this is a new moon, the first new moon of the new year, that says, get with it. Take responsibility for your own healing, for your own reparenting, for knowing who you are. The journey to self-exploration, it never ends. This is not a one and done. This is like saying, hey, let's do this. After this new moon, Uranus is going to in conjunct the south node. Technically, it is during this new moon, so there's really this liberation from, and there's a need to self-correct through liberating from inner dynamics that have created imbalances in our external relationships with others, and the need to objectify. That perfects, I believe, on the 12th, and then on Venus will also in conjunct Jupiter, its ruler. So there's this need to self-refine and self-correct through understanding what it is one believes about oneself, and then expanding upon the truth, investigating the truth, choosing to be on a journey of self-exploration of understanding who one naturally is and what one's own natural values are, and then liberating from any values that are unnatural. And then on the 13th, Mercury will re-enter Capricorn so we can reflect some more and apply it, okay? Because then Mercury is going to, it's going to be in close proximity to Mars. It'll eventually conjunct the sun. It will eventually conjunct Pluto. It's going to square the nodal axis. So everything that you have been working on, there's a need to continue to investigate, to continue to self-reflect, to continue to commit to being responsible to one's own evolutionary growth through learning about oneself and through making correct judgments through self-reflection of the database of wisdom from direct experience. I will go more into this next week, but this is your weekly forecast, and I want you all to know that whatever is going on in your life, this is a time period to be self-determined. The last thing that I almost forgot about, especially with this week's energetics and Mars being in Capricorn. Capricorn, if it is about self-determination, this can be a time period where our souls are desiring to re-experience prior instances of where we might have created our own trauma or participated in re-traumatizing ourselves, or not. But this is a time period on a soul level where we can be testing ourselves, where we're re-experiencing prior dynamics as a way to test ourselves, our own self-determination on a soul level, to say, fuck no, that's not who I am anymore. I am taking one of my teacher's words whenever I asked a question one time. But it is where we can be saying to ourselves and having to be self-determined to not be who we once were in the past. And this takes an immense amount of self-determination. And so I want us to remember this, and I want us to understand this, and anyone with a lot of Capricorn is going to know just what I'm talking about, because it can get tiring. But if something is coming up for you again, and you felt like you learned the lesson, this could be your soul testing yourself to see if you're self-determined to not make the same choices or the same judgments that you made in the past. And so I want to end with that and to let you all know that we all have the ability to be self-determined. The lie is that it's not obtainable, and it is. And at some point in our evolutionary journey, we learned that lesson. So I want everyone to work with this energy. A new moon is beautiful. I feel like this new moon really starts off the new year in a beautiful way regarding self-determination and this reparenting process and this healing process and this journey of self-exploration. That is the prayer of this year, of this new moon at the beginning of the year, is to continue to go and to remember to be like the mountain goat and occasionally look back over your shoulder and realize how far you have come, because you have. If you're watching these videos, you've definitely been on a evolutionary journey, and sometimes we just forget to do that. So hug yourself and look back and see how far you've come. I will see you all next week. And I am going to share this chart for just a minute before I jump off. This is your chart. Take a screenshot, see if anything is activating your own chart. And I will see you all next week. The written report will be posted in the description.